You've made it here. That's enough for now. Whatever the day brought, whether it rushed past you in noise or lingered longer than it should have, you don't need to carry it anymore. Right now, you're allowed to slow down. You don't need to respond to anything. You don't need to solve anything. Just sit here with me and let the world grow quiet for a little while. You've been thinking for hours, making decisions, trying to stay strong, trying to make sense of everything. But even the most disciplined mind needs a place to rest, and even the strongest spirit deserves stillness. This is that place. You're not behind, you're not late, you're here. There's nothing you need to do right now except breathe. Let your body feel the weight of the day easing off, like sand slipping through open fingers. Let your attention settle. No effort, no pressure, just quiet. If thoughts come, let them pass. If you feel tired, that's okay. That's allowed. You don't have to fix the past. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. You don't even need to fully understand what you're feeling right now. Just be here, as you are, as you've always been, and let this be enough. In a moment, we'll listen together, not to answers, but to reminders. Reminders of things you already know deep down. The kind of truths that don't shout, they wait. Like the ocean waits, like peace waits. You've earned a quiet mind tonight. Let's begin. The Stoics knew that effort without pause leads not to strength, but to exhaustion. Marcus Aurelius, in the quiet of his reflections, reminded himself that the mind, like the body, must be allowed its intervals of ease. Just as muscles tire after long strain, so too does the spirit falter when denied its rightful rest. To push endlessly is not discipline, it is neglect. The body weakens without sleep, the mind without silence. It is tempting to imagine that rest is something to be earned, a reward given only after productivity, achievement, or struggle. But that way of thinking is shaped by the world's urgency, not by reason. True rest is not a luxury. It is part of nature's rhythm. Even the Stoics, who are often misunderstood as cold or hard, spoke often of gentleness, not only toward others, but toward oneself. A disciplined mind is not one that works without pause. It is one that knows when to work and when to let go, when to focus and when to soften. The Stoic path is not a march without end. It is a balance, action and reflection, resolve and ease. They lived in a world of duty, but they knew that duty cannot be sustained without care, without time to recover, without stillness to reconnect with what matters. Think of the way a field lies fallow between plantings, or the way the sea settles after the wind quiets. These moments are not wasteful. They are essential. They are part of the cycle. So too is rest for the mind, to step back, to release the grip, to simply be. In those quiet intervals, the mind is not empty. It is healing. It is finding its center again. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can do is nothing at all, not out of apathy, but out of wisdom. The Stoics didn't chase endless stimulation. They often sought the opposite, time away from the noise, time to be with themselves, without the pressure to solve or to fix. They understood that just as the body needs food and movement and sleep, the mind needs stillness, simplicity, and space. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Tonight, it's enough to rest, to be still, not because you are weak or tired, but because you are wise enough to know when to stop. The Stoics taught that the mind is like a fire, powerful, but not infinite. It must be fed, but it must also be protected from being smothered. You cannot think clearly when the flame is flickering in a storm. You cannot reason well when your thoughts are frayed by fatigue. And so they stepped back. They reflected. They gave the mind room to breathe, not by force, but by acceptance. They did not demand constant effort from themselves. They sought clarity, and clarity only comes when the mind is calm. Even Marcus, with the weight of empire on his shoulders, took time to sit alone with his thoughts. He would write, not to perform, but to clear the dust from his thinking. He asked himself, does what happened keep you from acting with justice, self-control, wisdom, or truth? And if the answer was no, he let the disturbance go. He did not carry it farther than necessary. He didn't let it steal his inner stillness. The mind needs these pauses, not the kind filled with distraction or noise, but the kind where nothing is demanded, where there is no need to be better, faster, more productive, just quiet, just presence. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. To live well is not to fill every moment with doing. It is to live in harmony with what is, including the need for rest, including the limits of your own strength. A Stoic life is not rigid. It flows, like nature does. It bends with the seasons. It respects the natural need for recovery. That includes you, right now, lying here. You have done enough today. Truly, even if there are things left undone, even if your thoughts are still circling, that's okay. The Stoics did not demand perfection from themselves. They accepted imperfection. They made space for it. And then they returned, rested, steadier, more able to face the next day. Give yourself that same grace. Step back. Loosen your thoughts. Let your mind settle, like dust in still water. If you find yourself drifting, let it happen. That too is a kind of wisdom. You are not abandoning reason. You are making room for it to return stronger. And when you wake, you'll feel it. The difference between a mind that was driven too hard and one that was cared for. Let the fire burn steady, not fast. Let your thoughts grow quieter, not sharper. Let this moment be enough. Tonight, you are not a problem to solve. You are simply here, and that is more than enough. Even the sun, in all its power, does not disappear in an instant. It softens, it slows, it lowers itself gently, never rushed by the world it lights. The Stoics, who spent their lives studying the nature of things, would have seen this as more than a pattern in the sky. They would have seen it as a lesson, a reminder that everything, even what seems strongest, has its moment of rest. Nothing in nature moves without pause, not even the sun. The Stoic understanding of time was never about racing to finish. It was about moving with purpose, but also with care. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about accepting the natural order of things. He encouraged himself to live in agreement with nature, not to force what wasn't ready, not to demand that anything unfold faster than it should. Just as day gives way to night in its own time, so too should we allow ourselves to slow down without guilt. People often carry pressure into the quiet hours. Pressure to finish more, to understand more, to be more. But this urgency is not part of nature. It's something added by fear, by comparison, by misunderstanding. The Stoics believed that a wise person lives simply and peacefully, without being pulled by every demand or chased by every thought. Rest is not just allowed, it is necessary. Not because life is easy, but because life is constant. And without pauses, there is no clarity. Just as the body needs stillness after effort, the mind needs time to release its grip. The setting sun doesn't resist the evening, it eases into it. That's what rest should feel like. Not a collapse from exhaustion, but a willing return to balance. A conscious choice to stop striving, and to just be for a while. You don't have to meet every thought tonight. You don't have to answer every question. You're allowed to settle. The Stoics practiced reflection at the end of the day. Epictetus spoke about reviewing one's actions, not to judge harshly, but to understand and improve. But even this was done with calm. It wasn't meant to disturb rest. It was a way of closing the day gently, acknowledging where one had fallen short and letting it go. Not everything must be resolved before sleep. Some things can wait. And some things aren't problems at all, once seen in the quiet of night. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let what happened today soften at the edges. Let it lose its sharpness. The sun does not cling to the sky. It lowers itself steadily and trusts the rhythm of the world. You can do the same. Trust that it's okay to slow down. Trust that it's okay to stop searching for answers just for now. Even if your mind is still busy, even if your body is still tense, this moment is a step toward release. The Stoics didn't ask us to be perfect. They asked us to be honest. And right now, the honest thing may be admitting that you need rest, that you're tired, that you're ready to ease into a slower pace. The world will still be there tomorrow. The responsibilities, the goals, the uncertainty. But none of it needs to come with you into sleep. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he was a small part of a greater whole, and that what seemed overwhelming in the moment would often fade with time. What seems urgent now may be unimportant by morning. What feels tangled may begin to untie itself if you let it be. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There is a kind of wisdom in knowing when to stop. In knowing when to stop thinking, stop planning, stop reviewing. To pause, not in defeat, but in peace. The Stoics believed in acting according to reason, and reason says, no mind can function endlessly without rest. No spirit can remain steady without stillness. When the sun sets, it doesn't leave in silence because it's finished everything. It leaves because it's time. And so it goes below the horizon with quiet dignity. So can you. You don't need to force stillness. You just need to allow it. Let your mind follow the same path as the light outside your window, dimmer, slower, quieter, until you too have left the day behind. The Stoics believed that night was not a loss of time, but a return to it, a space where we remember what matters, not what we did, not what we must do, but simply the fact that we are here, alive, aware, capable of rest, even in a world that asks us to keep going. Rest is not the opposite of a meaningful life. It is part of it. And tonight, your only task is to let yourself settle. Even the sun takes time to set. So take yours. Let it be slow. Let it be quiet. Let it be enough. To rest is not to abandon one's purpose. It is not weakness, nor failure, nor loss of momentum. The Stoics understood that repose, true conscious stillness, is not the absence of activity, but the presence of something deeply valuable. A calm held with intention. A stillness that restores rather than delays. They saw no shame in quiet, only a different kind of strength. It is easy, especially in the modern rhythm of things, to mistake motion for meaning, to believe that to be still is to fall behind. But the Stoics lived by a deeper measure. For them, what mattered wasn't how much you moved, but whether your actions were guided by clarity, And clarity doesn't thrive in noise. It emerges in silence, in the pauses between decisions, in the calm that follows thoughtful restraint. Marcus Aurelius, in one of his many private writings, reminded himself to allow yourself a moment of stillness, not because the world had stopped needing him, but because he had stopped needing to rush toward it. There is a dignity in stillness when it comes from wisdom rather than exhaustion. When you pause not because you're too tired to continue, but because you've chosen to rest, you are allowed to stop reaching for more tonight. The Stoic view of repose was never about hiding or giving up. It was about recognizing when enough has been done and allowing the mind and body to return to center, to sit without striving, to be still, not because nothing matters, but because what matters most often reveals itself in the quiet. We're told so often that rest must be earned, that stopping is a luxury or a weakness. But the Stoics did not accept that. They saw rest as a discipline of its own, a skill to be practiced, not postponed. Epictetus said that we should pay attention to our inner state. And what is that, if not a call to stillness? Not to run from responsibility, but to face it with steadiness, the kind that only grows in calm. Repose, to rest, is not to abandon one's purpose. It is not weakness, nor failure, nor loss of momentum. The Stoics understood that repose, true conscious stillness, is not the absence of activity, but the presence of something deeply valuable, a calm held with intention, a stillness that restores rather than delays. They saw no shame in quiet, only a different kind of strength. It is easy, especially in the modern rhythm of things, to mistake motion for meaning, to believe that to be still is to fall behind. But the Stoics lived by a deeper measure. For them, what mattered wasn't how much you moved, but whether your actions were guided by clarity. And clarity doesn't thrive in noise. It emerges in silence, in the pauses between decisions, in the calm that follows thoughtful restraint. Marcus Aurelius, in one of his many private writings, reminded himself to allow yourself a moment of stillness, not because the world had stopped needing him, but because he had stopped needing to rush toward it. There is a dignity in stillness when it comes from wisdom rather than exhaustion. When you pause not because you're too tired to continue, but because you've chosen to rest, you are allowed to stop reaching for more tonight. The Stoic view of repose was never about hiding or giving up. It was about recognizing when enough has been done and allowing the mind and body to return to center, to sit without striving, to be still, not because nothing matters, but because what matters most often reveals itself in the quiet. We're told so often that rest must be earned, that stopping is a luxury or a weakness. But the Stoics did not accept that. They saw rest as a discipline of its own, a skill to be practiced, not postponed. Epictetus said that we should pay attention to our inner state. And what is that, if not a call to stillness? Not to run from responsibility, but to face it with steadiness, the kind that only grows in calm. Repose is not idleness. Idleness is passive. It drifts without direction. But repose is full of purpose. It is the deliberate choice to stop, to reflect, to restore oneself. When you lie still tonight, you're not wasting time. You're protecting your peace. You're making room for strength to return, gently and slowly. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. In stillness, we are not lost. We are more. There are moments when the mind feels clouded, stirred up by worry, distraction, or restlessness. Thoughts don't settle into place. Feelings arrive uninvited. Small concerns become large without warning. In these moments, it's tempting to try to force clarity, to push harder for understanding, for peace, for control. But the Stoics knew that true stillness doesn't come through force. It comes through patience, through quiet, through allowing time to do what pressure never can. One must allow time to settle the sediment of the soul. The Stoic tradition teaches that the soul, much like a pool of water, becomes murky when shaken. But if left undisturbed, the particles fall to the bottom. The water becomes clear again. Nothing has to be added. Nothing has to be removed. The only thing required is stillness and time. This kind of settling cannot happen in a rush. The mind, when troubled, will resist silence at first. It may reach for thoughts, for worries, for tasks left undone. But eventually, if left unpressured, it begins to slow. The movement softens, the need to react eases, and what once felt tangled starts to loosen on its own. That's the power of patient stillness. It's not passive, it's restorative. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to be like the rocky promontory against which the waves crash. But even the rock, unshaken, does not move. It doesn't fight the sea. It waits. It endures. And in that waiting, it finds strength. He also wrote that disturbances come not from things themselves, but from our judgments about them. And judgments are loudest when we are unsettled inside. Give them space. Let them fade. You don't have to answer them tonight. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Stillness is not emptiness. It is a return to center. The Stoics were not strangers to hardship. They faced exile, illness, political danger. But through it all, they sought something deeper. Not escape, but clarity. And clarity comes when the soul has had time to settle. When the mind is no longer spinning from thought to thought, chasing peace through effort. It's found in those moments when nothing is required and nothing is resisted. The sediment of the soul is everything we carry. The regrets, the conversations, the unspoken fears, the expectations. We may not even notice them piling up, but they color our thinking. They weigh on our choices. They stir when we are too busy to notice. And so, we rest. Not to forget them, but to let them settle, to see what remains when everything else becomes still. You don't need to figure everything out right now. This evening, your only task is to allow quiet, not the kind filled with distractions or half-listening, but the quiet where you simply let things be, where your mind is not pulled to the past or to what may come tomorrow, where you stop reaching and start noticing the calm that has always been waiting. The Stoics practiced this in their daily reflections, not to control their emotions, but to observe them, to see them more clearly, to understand what they were feeling without being overtaken by it. And that kind of observation only becomes possible when the sediment has settled, when the water is no longer cloudy and the view beneath it is still. This is why rest matters. Not because there's nothing to do, but because doing everything without pause leads nowhere. Without rest, there is no insight. Without stillness, there is no understanding. The soul needs time to become clear again. You don't have to hold so tightly anymore. Everything that's unclear, everything you don't yet understand, it doesn't have to be solved tonight. The Stoics didn't expect perfect control. They expected steadiness. And steadiness comes when you stop stirring the water and start allowing it to rest. Even now, as you listen, you may notice how some part of your mind is slowing down, how the thoughts you brought with you are beginning to lose their urgency. That's not because anything has been fixed. It's because you've stopped trying to fix it. You've allowed a pause. And in that pause, peace has room to grow. Trust that time will settle what needs settling. Trust that not every emotion requires an answer. Not every worry needs your attention right now. Some things are better seen in the morning light, after a night of stillness. Let your thoughts fall gently, like dust in a quiet room. Let your breath guide you toward calm. Let your body feel the weight of the day slipping away. The sediment will settle. It always does. And when it does, you'll feel it. The return of your own inner clarity. Quiet, but steady. Still, but full of meaning. Tonight, be patient with yourself. Let stillness do its quiet work. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are simply allowing your soul the space it needs to become clear again. And that, in the eyes of the Stoics, is wisdom. When Marcus Aurelius urged himself to withdraw into himself as into a fortress, he wasn't calling for escape from the world, but for a return to stability. Life, with all its movement and demands, pulls us outward. Conversations, decisions, expectations, they scatter our attention. But the Stoic path reminds us that there is a place within that remains untouched by noise, a place that can be entered quietly at any moment. And it is there that we find rest, not by fleeing from life, but by remembering what doesn't change when everything else does. To withdraw inward is not to retreat in fear. It's to step into the part of you that is steady, that is not defined by the day's events. The fortress within is not cold or distant. It is warm with stillness, strong with calm, and built from everything that endures: reason, clarity, purpose, presence. It is a place where the world's noise is muffled, and the mind is allowed to breathe. The Stoics believed that the true self is not harmed by the chaos of the outside world. What disturbs us is not the noise, but our attachment to it. What overwhelms us is not the event, but our reaction to it. And so they returned, again and again, to that inner space, not to hide, but to realign, to remember what is in their power, to let go of what is not. You are allowed to step away from the outside world for now. The inner fortress is not made of walls that separate, but of space that welcomes. It asks nothing of you except presence. In it, there is no need to prove anything, no pressure to be more than you are. It is a place where you can stop trying, stop performing, stop preparing, and simply rest, fully, quietly, without condition. The Stoics knew that this inward turning was a discipline. It had to be practiced, especially when the world felt loud or uncertain. But over time, they trusted that it would grow familiar, a place they could return to at will. Nowhere, Marcus wrote, can a person find a more peaceful retreat than in his own soul. And in that retreat, he found clarity. He didn't stay there forever. He didn't abandon the world. But when he returned to it, he was steadier, less shaken, more prepared to face what waited outside. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. When you rest tonight, let it be a turning inward, not just the body lying still, but the mind returning home. Let your attention soften. Let the thoughts of the day fall away. Whatever you are holding, let it rest beside you. The fortress within you is not locked. It is open to you, always. A quiet place that waits without judgment, where nothing needs fixing, where silence is enough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. This kind of withdrawal is not avoidance. It is healing. It is the choice to care for your mind the way you would care for a tired friend, with patience, gentleness, and trust. The Stoics believed that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from shaping your response to it. And that response grows stronger when it is rooted in stillness. The fortress isn't a place to escape what is hard. It's where you gather the strength to meet it with calm. Imagine, just for a moment, what it feels like to step inside that quiet place within yourself. There is no storm here, no judgment, only space, only breath. The thoughts slow, the worries lessen. You are not required to be anything here except present. Rest is not separate from this inner work. It is part of it. It gives you time to listen, not to the world, but to what you already know deep down. That your worth does not depend on how much you do. That your peace does not depend on how quiet the outside world is. That your mind, even when shaken, can return to stillness. Marcus turned inward during moments of hardship. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He withdrew into himself when he needed to find clarity, when everything outside was uncertain. You can do the same, not by effort, but by trust. Trust that your inner stillness is still there, beneath the noise, beneath the thoughts, beneath the weight of the day. As you lie here, feel the quiet building, not because the world has disappeared, but because you have chosen to return to your center. You are not running from life. You are reconnecting with it, from the inside out. There is nothing more you need to do tonight. The fortress is yours, safe, familiar, steady. Let yourself rest there. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind settle. You are not outside of yourself. You are home. And in that home, there is peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you have made space for calm. Because you have allowed yourself to rest. Because you know, as the Stoics did, that the strongest place to be is the quiet space within. The Stoics were familiar with fear, not because they gave into it, but because they saw it clearly for what it was, the mind reaching beyond the present into imagined futures. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Instead, break it into moments. Handle what is now. The future has not arrived, and often the pain we fear never does either. What hurts most is not what happens, but what we picture happening." The Stoics called this unnecessary suffering the weight of things that haven't even come to pass. When the body is still, but the mind is restless, it's usually not the past that keeps it turning. It's the future. The question of what if. The worry of what might. It stirs the imagination until sleep becomes distant, and peace feels just out of reach. But the Stoics remind us gently, worry is a misuse of the present. It's the mind trying to fix a future that hasn't arrived, and often never will. You don't need to solve tomorrow before you rest tonight. Let go of the idea that imagining pain now somehow protects you later. The Stoics saw how often people doubled their suffering this way, first in fear, then in experience. But they believed you should face difficulty once, and only if it actually happens. Anything else is borrowing pain from a place that doesn't exist yet. They were not careless. They understood preparation, but they drew a quiet line between preparing with calm and rehearsing pain over and over in the imagination. That rehearsal changes nothing except your peace of mind. It leaves you tense when you could be resting. And so they practiced the discipline of returning to the present moment where strength and reason live, where action, if needed, is clear, and where rest, if possible, is deserved. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Fear has a way of pretending to be useful. It whispers, that staying alert is smart, that imagining everything that could go wrong is responsible. But fear is rarely as wise as it seems. The Stoics believed that reason should guide us, not emotion dressed up as caution. And reason says, right now you are here, not in some imagined future, not in the moment of the thing you dread. You are here in a safe place, with time to breathe. The mind is creative. That's a gift. But it must be guided gently. Left alone, it spins stories. It fills in blanks with worst-case scenes. It tries to control the unknown by rehearsing discomfort. But that effort drains you. It saps energy from what matters now. The Stoics taught that courage comes not from controlling the future, but from facing each moment as it arrives, without anticipation or delay. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Tonight, you can rest. You are not avoiding your responsibilities. You are refusing to carry pain that doesn't belong to you yet, and may never belong to you at all. The future will come when it comes. And when it does, you will meet it with the strength you've built in moments like this. In quiet, in stillness, in choosing not to suffer needlessly. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He knew how powerful thought can be, and how gently it must be directed. When you find yourself tensing at the idea of something, pause. Ask yourself if it's happening right now. If it isn't, let it go. Set it down, like a heavy bag you don't need to carry through the night. Rest is not denial. It is preparation of the best kind. It is care for the self who will face tomorrow. And that care begins with peace, with choosing not to fill the quiet with echoes of imagined trouble, with allowing the body to lie still and the mind to follow, not by force, but by trust. Trust that you are allowed to be present, that you don't need to fill this moment with thoughts of what might go wrong, that it's okay to feel calm even when uncertainty exists, that rest, too, is strength. Let yourself be here now, not tomorrow, not in the next challenge, just here, where the blankets are soft, where the room is quiet, where your breathing slows. Let the thoughts drift past. Let them come and go without anchoring them. You don't need to answer them. They are not the truth. They are not fate. They are stories. And tonight, you can close the book. Nothing more is required of you. You're already prepared for what matters. The rest can wait. The worries can wait. The mind can return to quiet, the body to comfort. Let go of the need to anticipate pain. Trust that you will face what comes when it comes, and only then. And now, breathe softly, rest deeply, and let the future stay where it belongs, outside of this moment. Not every thought that enters the mind deserves to stay. Some come quietly, seem harmless, and take root before they are noticed. The Stoics observed this often, how one idea, left unchecked, can shape perception, mood, and behavior. Over time, a single unexamined thought can distort what is real. It can dictate your reactions, feed your fears, and tighten your grip on things that were never in your control. This is why they believed that the mind must be watched gently, but attentively. A thought unexamined can become a tyrant. The Stoics did not fear thoughts. They simply refused to treat them as truth without question. A thought is a suggestion, not a command. It may be useful, or it may not. It may reflect reality, or it may reflect a mood, a habit, a fear. The discipline they practiced was the quiet work of stepping back and asking, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it helping me live well? You don't need to believe every voice in your head. Many thoughts that arrive in the evening do so when the body is tired, and the day's noise has slowed. These thoughts are rarely kind. They replay conversations, raise doubts, summon old regrets or future concerns. They present themselves as urgent, as if they must be solved now. But the Stoics remind us, you can observe a thought without obeying it. You can see it rise, acknowledge it, and let it pass without giving it power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the colour of your thoughts." He wasn't telling himself to avoid thinking. He was reminding himself to be mindful of what he allowed to settle within him. A thought can shape your entire inner world, especially when it's repeated without being questioned. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. When the mind is left unguarded, not in fear, but in neglect, it begins to follow old paths, patterns built from past experiences, past mistakes, past warnings. These become habits of thought. And habits, when never reviewed, begin to feel like truth. That is how a thought becomes a tyrant. Not suddenly, but slowly. It becomes the lens through which everything else is seen. But you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. You can sit with them without reacting. You can ask softly, where did this come from? Is it mine or something I picked up along the way? Many thoughts are echoes, things heard, things learned unconsciously, things absorbed without choice. The Stoics believed in inner freedom, but that freedom is not automatic. It comes from paying attention. Tonight, as you rest, you may feel thoughts circling. Let them. Let them pass like clouds across a quiet sky. You don't need to chase them or silence them. Just don't follow them too far. Not every thought deserves your energy. Not every idea is a problem to solve. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The more calmly you watch your mind, the less control it has over you. The thoughts lose their urgency when they are not resisted or believed, and in their place a deeper stillness grows, a sense of clarity that does not need to explain itself. Seneca once said that we suffer not from the events of life, but from our judgments about them. Those judgments begin as thoughts, quick, automatic, and often unnoticed. But the Stoic practice is not to erase them. It is to bring them into the light, to look at them clearly, and to decide, with reason, not reaction, whether they belong. This is part of rest too, allowing the mind to soften its grip, allowing thoughts to rise and fall without turning them into burdens, allowing space to return, the space in which your deeper self, the one that watches quietly, can breathe again. Let yourself be still. Let your mind wander gently, without direction. And if a thought grows loud or sharp, simply notice it. You are not required to believe it. You are not required to act on it. You are not required to carry it into sleep. The thoughts that truly matter, the ones rooted in truth and virtue, they do not shout. They do not demand. They remain steady, like calm beneath the surface. Rest in that calm now. Let your mind release its grip. Let the tyrants of imagination dissolve in the quiet. You are safe here. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply returning to yourself. And in that return, you are free. Some questions are loud. They arrive suddenly, often in the still hours of the evening, when there's nothing left to distract the mind. They sound urgent, demanding answers, demanding clarity, demanding control. What if this happens? What should I do? Why did it go that way? The Stoics understood this habit of the mind to fill silence with questions, especially the kind that spiral. But they also knew something deeply reassuring. Not every question requires an answer right now. This is not a call to ignore responsibility or avoid reflection. It's an invitation to allow space, to recognize that some thoughts are seeds that haven't yet grown. Some problems need more time than effort. Some uncertainties can't be solved with more thinking, but with more patience. The Stoics often spoke of what is within our control and what is not. And one thing that lies firmly within our control is how we respond to the mind's questions. Whether we let them dictate our peace, whether we chase every one of them into the night, or whether we simply let them sit unanswered, without resistance. You don't need to solve everything tonight. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, again and again, that the mind can rest even in the face of the unknown. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Simple guidance, but it can be extended. If it is not useful, don't dwell on it. If it is not answerable right now, let it be. He knew that constant thinking, especially when driven by uncertainty, does not bring peace. It only builds tension. There is a kind of wisdom in deferring questions, in saying calmly, "Not now." The mind may protest, especially if it's used to being followed. But over time, it begins to trust that rest is part of the process. That space is not the absence of thinking, but the condition for better thought later. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You're not being careless by setting the questions down. You're being kind. You're giving yourself what you truly need, which is not another hour of circling thoughts, but the soft, steady comfort of silence, of sleep, of simply being, without trying to understand everything all at once. Seneca warned of the exhaustion that comes from trying to grasp what is out of reach. He wrote of the need to stop the mind from roaming endlessly, not to suppress it, but to calm it, to lead it gently back to the present moment, where life is real and rest is possible. So much of what we ask ourselves at night is shaped by emotion, by fear, by doubt, by pressure. And emotions are not permanent. They pass. If you answer their questions too quickly, you may answer from a place of tension. But if you wait, you might find the question itself no longer needs answering. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let the thoughts come, if they must. But don't chase them. Let them float without obligation. Let your breath become the only thing that needs your attention. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to rest. And in that pause, a quiet truth appears. Many of the answers you've been reaching for don't arrive in the moment of effort. They arrive later, when the mind is rested, when the body is calm, when the day has passed, and you return with more clarity and less noise. There's strength in admitting you don't know yet. There's peace in choosing not to decide. The Stoics believed in action guided by reason, but they also believed in patience, in taking time to see clearly, in trusting that some clarity unfolds on its own, without being forced. Tonight is for rest, not for solving, not for figuring things out. That time will come. But for now, the wisest thing you can do is let the questions rest beside you, unanswered. They are not forgotten. They are simply waiting for the right moment, and that moment is not now. Let yourself sink into this quiet. Let your body grow heavier, your breathing slower. You are not missing anything. You are not behind. You are simply allowing space. And in that space, the soul finds room to breathe again. Let the questions go for now. Let the mind be still. Let sleep come. And when morning returns, you'll be ready. Not because you found all the answers, but because you gave yourself the calm to meet them when they arrive. A mind that rushes ahead forgets where it stands. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius often wrote to himself as a reminder to stay with what's in front of him, to remain present, to keep both feet planted in the moment. He understood that when the mind runs too far into what might be, it loses its connection to what is. And when that happens, even simple things can feel overwhelming. Peace becomes distant, and rest nearly impossible. The mind wants to leap forward. It wants to anticipate, to calculate, to plan. It sees each moment not as a place to rest, but as a stepping stone to the next thing. And so, it races. But in that rush, it often stumbles. It loses awareness. It becomes anxious. The Stoics called for a different approach, one of steadiness, of attending to the present with full attention, even if it's simple, even if it's quiet. When we stay grounded in the moment, we see more clearly. We respond with intention rather than habit. We hear the quieter signals of the body and the subtle currents of emotion. But when the mind rushes, those signals are missed. There is no time for listening, only reacting. The Stoics believed this disconnection was the root of much suffering. Not what happens to us, but how we are pulled away from ourselves by what hasn't happened yet. You don't need to be ahead of yourself tonight. Let the thoughts about tomorrow stay where they are, unfinished. Let the next task, the next challenge, the next conversation all remain in their own time. The only thing that matters now is this breath, this moment, this quiet. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Rushing, even in thought, is a kind of restlessness. It feels productive, but it leaves the body tense, the breathing shallow, the muscles tight. The Stoics would say that we are not acting in accord with nature when we rush. Nature moves steadily, deliberately. The river doesn't hurry to the sea. The sun doesn't skip ahead to noon. There is a rhythm to things, and we are part of that rhythm, not apart from it. Seneca warned of living life as if we are always preparing for it. He wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there would be no end to them." To him, the rushing mind wastes the very thing it's trying to make use of: time. True rest begins when we stop measuring moments as tools for tomorrow, and begin inhabiting them fully, just as they are. The Stoics did not demand that we stop planning altogether, but they believed planning should arise from clarity, not from panic. When the mind hurries, it often imagines threats where none exist. It exaggerates, predicts, assumes. And in doing so, it pulls us out of alignment. The solution is not to think harder. It's to slow down, to return, to be where your feet are. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Right now, there's nothing you need to be rushing toward. The bed beneath you is enough. The breath you're taking is enough. The thoughts can come and go, but they don't need to carry you away. Let them pass. Let them fade. The mind will slow when it sees there's no need to run. Stillness is not a pause from life. It is life noticed. When we stop rushing, we notice how the body softens, how the heart steadies, how even the smallest things, a breath, a quiet, a faint breeze, begin to feel full again. That fullness doesn't come from effort. It comes from presence. A mind that stays grounded can respond to life with strength. A mind that races ahead becomes brittle, easily shaken by uncertainty. The Stoics built their peace on the ground beneath them, not in distant hopes or imagined fears. They reminded themselves, again and again, that nothing is more important than the moment directly in front of them. not because it is exciting or dramatic, but because it is real. And what is real is what restores us. Let your body settle. Let your breathing deepen. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply here now, and that is the safest place to be. The future will come when it's ready. Let it wait. For now, the only step you need to take is inward, toward calm, toward rest, toward the quiet strength that's already within you. The mind may try to rush again. That's okay. Just notice it. Gently bring it back, again and again, if needed. With each return, it becomes easier. With each return, you reclaim your footing. There's nothing to solve tonight, only this moment to rest in. Let that be enough. The Stoics often returned to a simple but powerful truth. It is not events themselves that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. The world happens. People speak. Situations unfold. The unexpected occurs. And yet, between what happens and how we feel about it, there is a space, a moment where the mind makes meaning. It decides what the event means, what it says about us, about the future, about what must be done. That space is where peace can be lost, or where peace can be protected. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." That doesn't mean pretending events are pleasant when they're not. It means understanding that our reaction is not automatic. It's chosen, even if unconsciously. And that choice can be delayed. It can be softened. It can even be set aside. Not every moment must be understood immediately. Not every experience must be labeled or explained right away. The Stoics believed in reason, but they also believed in timing. There is a wisdom in knowing when to think something through, and when to rest instead. When the mind is tired, when emotions are high, when the body is worn, it's okay to wait, to let your interpretation sleep, even if the event is still fresh. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You are allowed to feel what you feel, without having to decide what it all means right now. That's not weakness. That's care. It's the understanding that thoughts formed in exhaustion are rarely clear, that conclusions drawn in frustration are rarely complete, that interpretations built in a hurry are often carried longer than they should be. The Stoics practiced the art of stepping back. They trained themselves not to react without thought. Epictetus, in his teachings, urged his students to pause before judgment. He saw how quickly people turn events into suffering, not because the event demands it, but because the mind attaches weight to it. That weight can be set down. It can be returned to later, or never at all. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Even now, as you lie here, thoughts may rise up. Things that happened today, things someone said, things that didn't go as expected. The mind may want to explain them, to assign blame, to figure out what they mean. But you can let that wait. You can remind yourself gently. It's just a thought. It's just a moment. You are not required to interpret everything before you rest. What happened today does not have to define how you feel tonight. The mind can be quiet, even when the day was noisy. The body can be still, even when the world was unkind. This is part of what the Stoics called inner freedom, the ability to separate what happens from what you choose to believe about it. That freedom doesn't require control. It requires awareness and a willingness to pause. Let your thoughts drift, if they must. But let them pass. You are not their prisoner. You are not their servant. You can watch them float through and let them go without answering. interpretation is not a race. It's not a duty to be fulfilled before you sleep. It's an option. And tonight, you can say no to it. The world will still be there tomorrow. And with rest, your perspective will be steadier, your emotions calmer, your thinking clearer. The best responses come not from urgency, but from patience. Not from force, but from reflection. Let yourself breathe without trying to understand. Let yourself lie still without needing to resolve everything. There is peace in postponing interpretation, in saying, I don't need to know what it means yet. That space, that gentle pause, is what gives the mind room to heal, to slow down, to see more clearly without the pressure to act. The Stoics did not live free of challenge, but they practiced meeting challenge with clarity, and clarity grows in rest, in silence, in giving yourself permission not to rush toward meaning, but to wait for it to come naturally. Tonight is not for fixing or naming or labeling. It's for resting. Let the day be what it was. Let the events be what they were. Let your mind be quiet for now, and your breath be steady. You are not behind. You are not missing anything. You are simply stepping back from the habit of interpreting everything, and choosing, instead, to rest in the safety of the present moment. That is enough. Harmony is quiet. It does not push, and it does not resist. It simply moves in line with what is. The Stoics believed that a person at peace with themselves could live in the world without stirring it unnecessarily. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: a man in harmony with himself causes no disturbance. Not because he hides or avoids, but because his actions come from calm rather than conflict. He does not add to the noise around him because he has learned to quiet the noise within. When someone is not at peace inside, it often shows up outside, in hurried words, in sharp tone, in tension that spreads from one person to another. But when a person is in alignment with their own values, their thoughts, and their purpose, their presence is gentle. It doesn't need to dominate or retreat. It simply is. That kind of presence creates stillness, not only within, but in the space around them. The Stoics didn't think harmony was something you found by chance. It was a way of living, of being honest with yourself, of acting in accordance with reason, and of letting go of the need to be in control of everything. They believed that when your inner world is steady, the outer world loses much of its power to disturb you. Not because the world changes, but because your relationship with it does. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let go of the idea that you must fix everything, that you must respond to every challenge, every emotion, every passing thought. The mind will always present something to solve, but not every invitation needs to be accepted. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is to wait, to let things settle, to trust that clarity comes more easily when you are not fighting yourself. Harmony begins with self-acceptance, with acknowledging your thoughts without judgment, with recognizing your limits without shame, with understanding that you are a person in progress, always learning, always adjusting. The Stoics saw this as a kind of strength. They knew that pretending to be more certain than you are only leads to pressure, that forcing yourself to be somewhere you're not creates friction, but to be in honest relationship with yourself. That is where calm lives. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There is a kind of stillness that comes from not needing to explain yourself, not needing to be seen a certain way, or to defend what doesn't need defending. A person in harmony with themselves has no urge to argue with what they already know. They are not shaken by misunderstanding. They respond, when needed, with care, and they rest, when possible, with ease. This doesn't mean becoming distant. It means becoming grounded, being able to interact without being carried away, to hear without being disturbed, to feel without being overwhelmed. The Stoics saw emotion as natural, but it was the uncontrolled reaction, the immediate rush to judgment or action that they worked to soften. They believed that peace was possible, even in difficult circumstances, when a person knew where their stability came from. And it always came from within. You are allowed to rest in yourself tonight. You don't need to reach outside for reassurance. You don't need to perform or prove anything. You are enough as you are. And harmony isn't earned through effort. It is allowed through stillness, through pausing the chase and letting the self breathe again. It may have been a long day. Some parts of it still echo in your mind. But those echoes don't require response. Let them pass through. The disturbances they carry only stay if you invite them. Let them fade instead. Let your inner space grow quiet again. The Stoics did not seek applause. They sought alignment, a clear sense of what mattered, and the courage to live by it gently. Not forcefully, not perfectly, just gently, with consistency. And they believed that when a person acts from that place, they leave less harm behind, they move with less regret, they sleep more easily at night. Let your breath be your anchor now. Let your thoughts soften. There is no rush, no pressure, just a slow return to the center of yourself, where there is no argument, no confusion, no demand. Only calm, only rest. You don't need to have all the answers. You only need to be honest with yourself. You only need to stop running from the moment you're in. And once you stop, you may notice something. That what felt tangled begins to loosen. That what felt heavy begins to lighten. That the mind that tried to control everything no longer needs to. It can simply rest. Harmony is not a performance. It is not perfection. It is peace, allowed. It is choosing not to fight yourself, not to deny what's present, not to wish away what has already happened. It's returning to this moment with care. And from that place, nothing needs to be disturbed. Not by you, not within you. The world may do what it will, but tonight, your world is quiet. Let that be enough. Strength is often misunderstood. People imagine it as force, as boldness, control, intensity. But the Stoics saw something different. They believed true strength was quieter, less about action, more about steadiness. Not resistance in the sense of pushing back, but in the ability to remain calm when the world pushes first. To stay centered when others are shaken. To be present and firm without being harsh or loud. He who remains unmoved, they taught, is strongest of all. This doesn't mean being numb. It doesn't mean suppressing all emotion or ignoring life's difficulties. The Stoics felt just as deeply as anyone. They simply practiced meeting what came with balance. They knew that storms pass faster when you're not thrashing against them. That insults lose their power when they're not met with anger. That fears shrink when you stop running from them. Stillness is not inaction. It is mastery of reaction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the best revenge is not to be like the wrongdoer. His strength wasn't in overpowering others. It was in refusing to let their behavior change his own. He trained himself to remain unmoved by what did not touch his inner character. The world could swirl with pressure, criticism, chaos. but inside he guarded something steady, something untouched. You don't need to be shaken by everything that passes through your mind. Even tonight, thoughts may come. Thoughts about what went wrong, what didn't get done, what tomorrow might bring. But those thoughts don't have to pull you with them. You can let them pass like waves washing at your feet. You can remain still, not out of resistance, but because you've chosen calm. You've chosen to rest. The Stoics practiced this kind of quiet resolve every day. They knew that strength was not just for moments of battle, but for ordinary life, for sitting with discomfort, for facing disappointment without complaint, for saying no to what doesn't serve you, even when it's easier to say yes. That steadiness gave them room to breathe, room to think, room to remain who they were, even when the world invited them to become something else. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The most powerful kind of control is not over others, but over the self. Not controlling in the sense of strictness or suppression, but in choosing how you respond, in knowing that your mood, your peace, your presence are yours to shape, that no one can take them from you unless you hand them over. You are allowed to rest in that control tonight. You don't need to analyze or react. You don't need to follow every emotion that passes through. Some will be intense, some may even feel urgent, but none require your movement. Not right now. You can observe them, let them soften, let them go. The Stoics trusted that time would reveal most things for what they are, that pain felt deeply in the moment would become smaller if given space, that injustice could be met without bitterness, that fear could lose its shape if not fed. And so they stood still, not cold, but grounded. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. You can allow this moment to be simple, to be soft, to be quiet. There is no weakness in stillness, no passivity in peace. The one who remains unmoved is not avoiding life. They are meeting it with strength that doesn't need to be proven. Let your breath guide you now. Let your body grow heavier. You're not being asked to solve anything tonight, not to answer, not to fix. You are being invited to rest in your own presence, steady, calm, unshaken. This is the kind of strength that needs no witness. It's not for applause or display. It's for you, for your health, for your sleep, for your peace. The world will move as it does. People will speak, things will change, time will carry everything forward. But your calm can remain. That's the kind of strength that the Stoics honored most. Not reaction, but restraint. Not motion, but inner stillness. And from that stillness, rest becomes natural. Let your thoughts rise without chasing them. Let your feelings come without naming them. Let everything move while you stay still. And tomorrow, if movement is needed, you'll move with purpose, not because you were pushed, but because you were ready. Tonight, you're not required to be anything but here. Quiet, grounded, at peace. Let that be enough. The Stoics believed that the soul, like a vessel at sea, needs something to hold it steady. Without an anchor, even the strongest ship can be thrown off course. Waves may not break it, but they'll spin it aimlessly, dragging it wherever the current leads. In the same way, a soul without direction is pulled by every mood, every worry, every passing thought. It doesn't sink, but it doesn't rest either. It's always drifting, always reacting, always searching. The Stoics called for a different way. They believed the soul should not be tossed like a ship without anchor. That anchor, for them, was reason. It was self-awareness. It was a quiet commitment to remain centered, even when everything around you moves. Anchoring the soul didn't mean refusing to feel, or denying pain, or ignoring hardship. It meant having something deeper than the moment's emotion, something that holds firm even when life changes quickly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But that kind of peace doesn't appear just because you want it to. It appears when you return again and again to what holds you steady, to what matters most, to your values, to your breath, to the small, certain truths that remain even when the world doesn't cooperate. You don't need to follow every wave tonight. Let your thoughts move without moving with them. Let your feelings rise without reacting to them. If something unsettles you, notice it, but don't let it carry you. You're allowed to feel without being taken. You're allowed to be still without being passive. The soul, steadied by reflection, doesn't resist what comes, but it doesn't surrender to it either. It watches, it considers, it chooses, and in that choosing, it remains whole. The Stoics practiced this every day, not as a performance, but as a quiet form of protection. They didn't want to live hardened or withdrawn. They simply wanted to live on purpose, not by accident. And that meant choosing where to place their attention, choosing how to respond, choosing when to let go. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Some days stir the waters more than others. You may carry tension that doesn't have a clear source. You may feel unsettled for reasons that don't make sense right now. That's okay. There's no need to force understanding. No need to fix it before sleep. Tonight, your only task is to return to your anchor, to the part of you that's always been steady, even when you couldn't feel it. That part isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It simply waits beneath the rushing thoughts, beneath the shifting emotions, beneath the stories that the mind tells when it's tired. It's there, always, like the deep water that doesn't stir even when the surface is rough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The Stoics didn't teach detachment in the cold sense. They taught presence, the kind that stays in the moment without being owned by it, the kind that observes emotion without becoming it, the kind that rests not in escape, but in awareness. That's where the soul finds its ground, not outside of life, but within it, rooted in clarity. Right now, your anchor might be something simple, your breath, a phrase you trust, the quiet rhythm of your body lying still. Whatever it is, stay with it. Let the waves do what they will. They always pass. What stays is you, watching, breathing, returning to calm. The ship does not sink because there are waves. It remains afloat because it's designed to. The Stoic soul is the same. It was never meant to avoid life. It was meant to meet it with poise. And when it rests deeply, because it knows that storms are not constant, and strength does not always mean movement. Let your thoughts drift without pulling you under. Let your body grow heavier, not from burden, but from release. This is your time to rest, not because everything is solved, but because you are choosing not to drift tonight. Let your soul be anchored in stillness, in peace, in the quiet truth that you are already enough, already steady, already capable of meeting life as it comes, but not now. Now is for rest. Let that be enough. Stillness is often mistaken for inaction. To the outside world, it can look like a pause, like idleness, like waiting. But the Stoics saw stillness differently. They understood it as an act of discipline, not the absence of movement, but the refusal to be moved by what doesn't deserve your energy. To be still is not to do nothing, but to choose, carefully and calmly, when and how to act. That choice is not weakness. It is strength held in reserve. It is power that does not need to prove itself. A person who is still on purpose is not frozen. They are listening. They are watching. They are considering before they step. And because of that, their steps are steady, measured, not rushed by fear, not pushed by pressure, not pulled by habit. This is what the Stoics practiced, a calm resistance to being dragged by every thought, every emotion, every demand. Stillness gave them space, and in that space they found clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, especially if you have within you a set of beliefs on which to rely." Stillness, for him, was a return to those beliefs, a return to what mattered, to act without being moved by impulse, to rest without guilt, to remain steady, not because nothing was happening, but because he had chosen where to place his attention. You don't need to chase every thought tonight. Not every feeling requires your response. Not every discomfort demands your correction. The urge to fix, to solve, to react, it can be set aside. Stillness is not avoidance. It's patience. It's a quiet knowing that you don't need to be everywhere, for everything, all at once. The Stoics saw stillness as an internal posture. It wasn't about silence or inactivity, but about keeping the soul undisturbed by what lies outside its control. They believed that nature moves with order, not with haste. That reason thrives in calm, not in noise. So they practiced slowing the mind. They practiced waiting. They practiced letting the world be loud without joining the noise. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Even when the body is resting, the mind may still be busy. Thoughts circling, searching for resolution, trying to outrun the discomfort of uncertainty. But this kind of effort rarely brings peace. Stillness, on the other hand, does. Not because it gives answers, but because it makes space for answers to arise naturally, in their own time, not through force. To remain still in the face of urgency is not easy, but it is a choice you can make again and again, to pause before you react, to notice without attaching, to feel without being pulled. That's the essence of Stoic rest, not emptiness, but deliberate calm. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let the thoughts pass through without needing to hold them. Let your feelings soften without needing to name them. You are not required to act on everything that arises in your awareness. Some things will settle on their own. Some things will make more sense in the morning. And some don't need to be answered at all. Stillness gives the body rest and the mind relief. It opens a space where you are not asked to perform or improve, but simply to be. That is more than enough. There is wisdom in doing nothing, when doing nothing is a conscious decision to wait, to breathe, to listen to what remains once the noise subsides. The Stoics didn't teach stillness as isolation. They taught it as readiness, a way to meet life with a clear mind, and a way to meet rest with a clear conscience. They knew that stillness could hold action within it, not outward motion, but inward preparation, a quiet restoration of strength. Right now, your only work is to be still in this moment, to trust that it's okay not to move, not to respond, not to solve. You're not being left behind. You are choosing to be here. You are choosing to rest. Let your body sink into that decision. Let your breathing slow. Let the parts of you that felt tense begin to soften. There is nothing urgent in this moment. There is only stillness, and your choice to stay within it. You are not missing anything by being still. You are returning to yourself. You are making space for rest, for peace, for the calm that doesn't come from control, but from release. And tomorrow, when it's time to move, you will move from a place of calm, not reaction. You'll be steadier, clearer, because you allowed yourself this time. Let the stillness hold you tonight. Let that be enough. The feeling of being late does not always come from the clock. It comes from expectation, from comparison, from the pressure to be somewhere other than where you are. It creeps in quietly in the form of unfinished tasks, future worries, or imagined timelines. But the Stoics understood something different. They knew that real peace begins when you release the race, when you stop measuring yourself against where you think you should be. He who has nowhere to be is never late. This kind of freedom doesn't mean you've given up on direction or purpose. It means you've stopped chasing the illusion that life must happen on a schedule. The Stoics taught that nature moves in its own time. The sun rises when it rises. The seasons change without hurry. No moment in nature is early or late. It simply arrives. And we, too, are part of that rhythm. When you believe you're falling behind, your mind rushes. It scans for missed steps, for delays, for lost chances. But often, nothing is actually missing. Only your trust in the present. Stillness becomes difficult when you think you should already be somewhere else. But the truth is, right now is the only place you can be. And that is enough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let go of the need to catch up. Let go of the belief that everything must be resolved tonight. The Stoics didn't view time as a race to be won. They saw it as a series of moments, each one fully alive, each one complete in itself. Rushing through one only makes you miss it, and the more you miss, the more you feel behind. Stillness breaks that cycle. It reminds you that now is already whole. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the present moment is all we truly possess. Never let the future disturb you, he wrote. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. He believed that preparation was internal, not a matter of keeping pace with others, but of keeping peace with yourself. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There is a quiet dignity in moving without urgency, in sitting without needing to go anywhere, in lying down without feeling late for anything. A person who is content in the moment is not idle. They are in harmony. They're not frozen. They're free. He who has nowhere to be is not lost. He is resting in the one place no one else can occupy. This present moment, just as it is. You don't have to rush into tomorrow. You don't need to revisit everything that didn't get done today. Sleep is not a pause in progress. It is part of progress. It is where clarity returns, where worry fades, where the body repairs itself and the mind lets go of what cannot be carried forward. There will be time for answers, time for decisions, but not now. Now is for release. You're not behind. You're not too late. You are exactly where you are meant to be, here, resting, listening, settling. In this stillness, nothing is missing. The Stoics believed that contentment came not from having everything figured out, but from learning to live with what is, calmly, steadily, without complaint. And in doing so, they found freedom not from time, but within it. Right now, there are no appointments, no deadlines, no places to arrive, just breathe, just quiet, just this soft return to yourself. Let the thought of being late fall away. Let the sense of urgency dissolve. The world can wait. You don't have to. There is wisdom in stillness. There is strength in doing nothing, when that nothing is chosen. When you decide, with care, to stop running, to stop measuring, to simply be. Let that choice be your rest tonight. Let that be enough. Desire is loud. It reaches forward. It imagines what could be, and insists that what is, isn't quite enough. It stirs the mind with visions of more, with questions of when, with a constant leaning toward the next thing. The Stoics didn't condemn desire, but they knew its danger. They saw how it unsettles the soul, how it creates hunger, even in the midst of fullness. And so they practiced the opposite: stillness, contentment, simplicity. Desire nothing, they taught, and you will have everything you need. This doesn't mean the absence of ambition. It doesn't mean never wanting to grow or improve or explore. It means looking closely at what drives the desire. Is it grounded in reason or in restlessness? Is it something you truly need or something you've been taught to chase? Most of the time, desire is not about the thing itself. It's about what the mind has attached to it, an idea, a story, a sense of worth. But the Stoics understood that peace comes not from collecting more, but from realizing that nothing extra is required to feel whole. What's essential is already here: a clear mind, a steady breath, a place to rest, a body willing to heal. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let go of the pressure to get somewhere else. Let go of the thought that happiness is just a few steps away. Once something changes, once something is gained. Right now, you have enough, more than enough. The quiet you're listening to, that's yours. The air you're breathing, yours too. No striving needed, no earning, just presence. Seneca often reminded himself that wealth, pleasure, status, all of these are borrowed from the outside world. They are not part of us, and what comes from outside can always be taken away. So he asked himself to find calm within, to value things that could never be stolen: clarity, self-respect, integrity, peace. These don't come from desire. They come from letting go of it. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Even tonight, you may feel a quiet pull toward something, a wish, a lingering thought that there's still more to be done, still more to be gained. But the Stoic path offers another option: to sit with what is, to settle into the stillness of enough, to desire less, and in doing so, to discover more. There is comfort in simplicity, in resting your thoughts on what cannot be taken, in finding satisfaction not through addition, but through awareness. When you stop reaching, your hands are free. When you stop chasing, your steps become lighter. The Stoics believed that most suffering comes not from loss, but from wanting too much in the first place. They weren't immune to longing, but they trained themselves to question it, to ask gently, is this really necessary? Or have I just forgotten how to be content? You haven't forgotten. You're remembering it now, in this moment, without effort. You don't have to fight for calm. You only have to stop moving past it. It's already here, under the desire, beneath the noise. Let your body rest. Let your breath soften. You are not behind. You are not missing anything. You are complete, even in this quiet moment. Especially in this quiet moment. Desire tells you that peace lies ahead. The Stoics remind you that peace is found by stepping away from that chase, by returning to yourself, empty-handed, and finding you're not empty at all. Nothing more is needed. Not tonight. Not now. Let that be enough. A cluttered mind makes a heavy life. The Stoics saw this clearly. They lived in busy times, politics, war, uncertainty, but they trained themselves to see through the noise, not by ignoring it, but by returning to what mattered. They believed that the mind, when left unchecked, tends to complicate things. It spins stories, invents problems, picks up worries that don't belong. And so they practiced the art of returning to simplicity. He who simplifies his thoughts, they believed, simplifies his life. A simple thought isn't a shallow one, it's a clean one. A thought free of unnecessary layers, free of old assumptions, free of imagined futures and exaggerated fears. The Stoics asked themselves often, what exactly is happening here? What is true? What is within my control? They broke things down, not to avoid them, but to understand them, to see them clearly, and from that clarity to live with less resistance. Most of the mind's tension doesn't come from the events of the day. It comes from what we tell ourselves about them, from what we imagine they mean, from the weight we attach to them. A glance, a message, a silence. These are small in themselves. But the thoughts built around them can grow until they feel like walls. Simplicity breaks those walls down. It reminds you that things are rarely as tangled as they seem once you stop adding to them. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Right now, there may still be a loop running in your head, something from earlier today, or something waiting tomorrow. It might feel like a knot, too tight to undo. But ask yourself gently, what is actually happening? What part of this is real, and what part is made of layers I've added? Often, there's far less to worry about than we think. And what's left becomes manageable when stripped down to its true shape. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be overheard complaining, not even to yourself. He wasn't suggesting denial, he was protecting his own peace. He knew that every repeated complaint, every replayed frustration makes life feel heavier than it is. Simplifying the mind means choosing which thoughts deserve your time, and which ones are just noise dressed as urgency. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The Stoics were never interested in chasing complexity. They saw how the world often rewards busy minds, those who can juggle many thoughts at once, who anticipate every outcome. But they believed the wiser path was clarity, not to know more, but to see more simply. A mind filled with unfiltered thoughts is like a room with too much furniture. You can't move freely, you can't rest. Simplifying your thoughts doesn't mean losing depth. It means clearing a path to what matters. It means choosing to focus on what you can influence and letting the rest go. This doesn't happen once. It's a practice. A soft return to clarity each time the mind wanders. You don't have to entertain every thought that appears. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's familiar doesn't mean it belongs here tonight. Simplicity is the gentle sorting of what's helpful from what isn't, of what's kind from what's cruel, of what brings peace from what only feeds tension. You are allowed to let go of what complicates your rest. Let your thoughts soften. Let them become fewer. Let the important ones stay, the ones that reassure you, the ones that bring you back to now, to your breath, to your body, lying still, to this moment, which asks nothing of you except to be here. Seneca wrote that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. This applies to thought as much as to wealth. The mind that seeks more and more answers, more explanations, more guarantees, never rests. But the mind that accepts enough finds peace. Right now, enough is a soft place to lie down, a breath that moves through you without effort, a moment where nothing is expected of you. No decisions, no solving, no sorting of all the things tomorrow might ask. You don't need to fill the silence. Let it be quiet. Let your thoughts come more slowly. The world will not collapse while you rest. The things you think you must hold together, most of them can wait, and the few that cannot, you will meet them more clearly after rest, after stillness, after you've let your mind return to something simpler. The Stoics trained themselves to observe their own thoughts, not to suppress them, but to choose them. They questioned their assumptions. They paused before reacting. They made space between what happened and how they responded. That space is where stillness grows. Even now, that space is here, between the thought and the next one, between the worry and the reflex to follow it, between the pressure to think and your quiet permission not to. Let the stillness grow. Simplifying your life does not require changing the world around you. It begins in the mind, and from there, it changes everything else. You start to move more gently, speak more clearly, carry less. The person who simplifies their thoughts is not distracted by every mood. They are not caught in every conversation. They are not torn between 100 imagined outcomes. They stay with what is. They do what they can, and they leave the rest. That kind of life is not small. It's free. It has space for rest, for quiet, for peace. Let yourself move toward that kind of life tonight, even if it's only in your breathing, even if it's only for a little while. Let your thoughts slow. Let them become lighter. You don't need to sort every one of them. You don't need to fix anything now. You don't need to know what's next. What you need, you already have. Stillness, breath, the ability to notice what matters and let the rest go. The mind will try to add more. It always does. But you can return to less. That return is a choice, one you can make again and again. Tonight, keep it simple. A quiet room, a slow breath, a soft thought, and nothing more. Let that be enough. Freedom, as the Stoics understood it, is not about doing whatever you want. It's not about collecting more, going further, or breaking every boundary. It's something quieter, softer, more lasting. They believed that true freedom lies in needing less, in being satisfied with little, in choosing what's essential and letting everything else go. Not because they rejected the pleasures of life, but because they knew that depending on them makes you a prisoner to what you cannot control. A person who needs very little can never be truly poor. They are not at the mercy of fortune, or of other people's choices, or of circumstances beyond their reach. They are rich in something deeper, in self-sufficiency, in clarity, in peace of mind. And in that simplicity, they find a kind of freedom that can't be taken. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." The craving, not the lack, is what creates distress. When you always want more, every moment becomes a waiting room for the next. You forget to rest. You forget to feel whole. But when you recognize how little you truly need, something shifts. The pressure fades. The mind quiets. You stop running, and you begin to feel free. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Even now, you might feel a quiet tension, a thought about something unfinished, something you're missing, something you feel you should be working toward. But those thoughts often come from the belief that you are incomplete, that peace is waiting on the other side of something else, a possession, a decision, a milestone. The Stoics would ask gently, is that thing truly necessary? Or have you simply grown used to the idea that you need it? When you need less, rest comes easier. The mind is not filled with comparisons or goals. The body is not preparing for the next thing. Simplicity invites stillness, and stillness is the home of real strength. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The world often tells you that freedom means more choice, more access, more options. But the Stoics knew that having more doesn't always mean being free. Sometimes it means being distracted, being burdened, being pulled in too many directions. When you need many things to feel okay, then you are always at risk of loss, of change, of disappointment. But if you need very little, you can move lightly. You can sit still without fear. Imagine your needs tonight reduced to the simplest form, a quiet place to rest, a safe breath in your chest, a clear thought in your mind. That's already enough. Anything more is a gift. Anything less is still manageable. This is how the Stoics lived, by keeping their definition of enough within reach. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." He didn't write this from comfort. He wrote it as an emperor burdened with responsibility, surrounded by noise and uncertainty. And still, he believed that peace came not from what he had, but from what he no longer needed. You can rest in that same clarity now. There's no pressure to perfect your surroundings, no need to solve the future tonight. The soft rhythm of your breath is already proof that you are okay. You are supported by the ground beneath you. You are held by the quiet of this moment. Let go of everything you've been carrying that was never essential. Let go of the expectations, the comparisons, the imagined obligations. They will still be there tomorrow, but tonight, you don't need them. You don't need to chase more to deserve peace. You already have everything you need to rest. Truly rest, not because the world has finally made sense, but because you've allowed yourself to stop needing it to. The Stoics practiced gratitude not as a performance, but as a habit of attention. They looked at what they had and reminded themselves that it was enough. Warmth, shelter, the ability to think, to choose, to breathe. The mind, when trained to appreciate, stops needing to acquire. And in that shift, freedom begins. You don't have to fix anything before you sleep. You don't need to achieve or improve tonight. In fact, there is strength in choosing not to. There is courage in saying, "This is enough." Let your thoughts slow down. Let your body soften into stillness. You are not behind. You are not lacking. You are simply here, in a moment that asks for nothing more than your presence. Let the desire for more fall away. Let the imagined needs dissolve. Let simplicity return to you, not as sacrifice, but as freedom. Freedom from pressure, freedom from restlessness, freedom from the chase. You don't need much, you never did. And what you truly need, you already have. Your breath, your mind, your ability to return to stillness again and again. That is the Stoic path. That is enough. Let yourself sleep now. Let that be enough. Some movements are not our own. We think we are choosing, responding, deciding. But often, we are being pulled by habit, by fear, by the desire to be approved of or not to be misunderstood. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed that much of what disturbs the soul is not what happens in the world, but what we're tied to in our minds. The need to control, the urge to impress, the fear of judgment, all of these are strings. And when we cut the string, the puppet falls still. Stillness, they taught, is not just something we create. It's what remains when we stop being moved by the wrong things, the wrong values, the wrong comparisons, the wrong fears. When we no longer dance to every impulse or worry, we come back to ourselves. We return to peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That power, the ability to pause, to reconsider, to let go, is what allows the strings to be cut. Not with force, not in anger, but with quiet clarity. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. If there's a thought tonight that keeps returning, a regret, a conversation, a doubt, notice how it moves you, how it pulls your focus, tugs your mood, changes your posture. This is not your fault. The mind learns to follow certain patterns without asking. But the Stoics invite you to ask now, do I need to be moved by this? Or am I simply continuing out of habit? Many of the things that unsettle us are not chosen. We didn't pick them consciously. They came from somewhere, from the culture around us, from childhood, from fear. But over time, they become familiar. And because they're familiar, they feel real. So we follow them. We get pulled by them. But the Stoics show us another way. Awareness, followed by release. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You may notice that when you lie still, the body wants to move. It fidgets, it tenses, it shifts. And the mind is no different. It wants to be occupied. It rehearses, it replays, it imagines. But neither the body nor the mind needs to be ruled by this movement. Both can be invited to settle, not by force, but by choice. And that choice begins with asking, what am I attached to right now? Maybe it's a need to resolve something. Maybe it's a string tied to someone else's opinion. Maybe it's the fear of missing out, or falling behind, or not being enough. These things move us, sometimes gently, sometimes sharply, but they are not part of who we are. They are ideas, conditions, external things we've grown used to treating as internal. The Stoics believed that inner peace could not coexist with outer dependency. The more we rely on things we cannot control, praise, comfort, security, certainty, the more vulnerable we become. Every string tied to the outside world is a potential disturbance. And so they practice loosening those strings, one by one, thought by thought. You don't have to be pulled tonight. You can set down the weight of needing to explain yourself. You can release the urge to check, to solve, to know. Rest doesn't come from figuring everything out. It comes from letting go of the need to figure it out right now. Stillness is what happens when the mind is no longer being puppeteered by expectations, by old fears, by imagined futures. It happens when you return to your center, the place that is calm by nature, not because it's empty, but because it's grounded. Cutting the string doesn't mean abandoning what you care about. It means no longer being ruled by it. It means being able to act from intention, not compulsion, from clarity, not pressure. Let your thoughts slow down. Let them float without pulling. You don't have to follow each one. You can lie here, untouched by the need to chase them. The puppet only moves when something else is pulling. But you are not a puppet. You are the one who notices, the one who breathes, the one who can pause, even for a moment, and choose peace. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery isn't stern or controlling, it's gentle. It's the kind of freedom that comes when you no longer need everything to go your way, when you stop tying your peace to what others do, when you stop thinking every thought must be answered. Let your mind rest in that freedom now. Let the strings fall away. Whatever thoughts rise, about tomorrow, about something unresolved, about yourself, you can see them without being pulled. You can acknowledge them without giving them your energy. You're allowed to remain still. Let the body relax. Let the shoulders loosen. Let the breath deepen. You don't have to do anything right now. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not missing anything. Every string that once pulled at you is only as strong as your attention. Take that attention back. Give it to your breath, to the softness of the pillow, to the space between thoughts. That space is yours. And in that space, you are free. Free not because everything is resolved. Free because you have chosen not to be moved by what doesn't deserve your peace. Let that be your rest tonight. Let that be enough. Every string that once pulled at you is only as strong as your attention. Take that attention back. Give it to your breath, to the softness of the pillow, to the space between thoughts. That space is yours. And in that space, you are free. Free not because everything is resolved. Free because you have chosen not to be moved by what doesn't deserve your peace. Let that be your rest tonight. Let that be enough. The Stoics knew that the greatest struggles often take place where no one else can see them, inside the mind. They understood how easily a single thought can spiral into tension, how quickly the imagination can invent stories that disturb sleep, how sharply self-criticism can echo long after the world has gone quiet. But they also knew something gentler, something deeply freeing. The mind is not a battlefield, and you don't have to fight every thought. You can walk away. To the Stoics, the mind was not meant to be a war zone. It was meant to be a refuge, a space of reason, of clarity, of calm. But when left unexamined, it often becomes a place of conflict, competing voices, loops of worry, regret pulling in one direction, fear pulling in another. All of it loud, all of it exhausting, and none of it necessary. Stillness begins when you recognize that not every thought needs to be answered, not every memory needs to be relived, not every possibility needs to be predicted. Many of the things the mind offers are not problems to solve, they are echoes, habits, momentary flickers of an overworked brain. And the Stoics knew the cost of always engaging. So, they practiced something else, stepping back. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find a strength. That strength wasn't about force. It was about permission. Permission to rest, to let go, to stop treating every thought like a demand. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. If your mind is busy tonight, if it feels like thoughts are clashing with each other, if there's a voice inside trying to resolve everything before you can sleep, you're not doing anything wrong. You're human. But you don't have to stay in the middle of that tension. You don't have to argue with it. You can leave the battlefield. You can step out of the pattern that says peace comes only after everything is figured out. That's the mind's oldest trick, keeping you awake by pretending that worry is useful. But worry isn't clarity, it's noise, and it gets louder the more you argue with it. The Stoics chose stillness, not because they were indifferent, but because they knew when to stop. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The truth is, many thoughts are just habits, well-practiced loops that the brain repeats because it's used to them. Doubts about whether you did enough, predictions about what could go wrong, replays of things you wish you said differently. These thoughts do not need your full attention. You can see them without stepping into them, like watching a conversation through a closed window, present but untouched. Walking away from the battlefield doesn't mean pretending there's no noise. It means choosing not to participate in every fight. It means noticing the tension without feeding it. That noticing is where the Stoics placed their focus. Not in the fight, but in the pause before it, the breath that comes before the reaction. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and that suffering grows when the imagination is treated like fact, when every fear is believed, when every criticism is taken as truth." The Stoics stepped back. They didn't wrestle with every thought, they questioned it, and then, when needed, they let it go. You are allowed to let go now. Let go of the pressure to answer every doubt. Let go of the need to fix what can wait until morning. Let go of the belief that resting means you're avoiding something. It doesn't. It means you are choosing peace. Let your breath remind you that you are here, that this moment is enough, that you are not in danger, that nothing must be solved right now. Let your shoulders fall a little more. Let your hands unclench. The battlefield grows quiet when you stop swinging. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. You can watch them rise and let them pass. You can remain still while they swirl around you, untouched. This is what the Stoics practiced each day, not eliminating thought, but stepping back from its control. They created space inside themselves so that the outside world or their own minds couldn't shake them so easily. That space is where calm lives, and it's where you're allowed to return now. You don't have to fix your mind tonight. You don't have to turn off every thought. You just have to stop following them all. Like footsteps fading in the distance, the noise will lessen. You'll notice how many thoughts were just movement, not meaning, just noise, not truth. Let your mind settle, not because everything is resolved, but because you've chosen not to chase every shadow. You don't need to stand in the storm. You can step inside. You can close the door and rest. The world will wait. The thoughts will wait. But your peace, your deep, steady, quiet peace, is here now, waiting only for you to stop fighting. Let that be enough. The Stoics believed that peace is found not just in what we choose to notice, but in what we choose to leave alone. The mind can easily make a habit of checking, rechecking, scanning again, not because the first look was unclear, but because it doubts itself. This, they taught, is how the soul becomes restless, not from what it sees, but from how often it returns to what it has already seen. Look once, not twice, if once is enough. This practice of restraint is not about carelessness, it's about trust. Trust in your perception. Trust in your choices. Trust that you do not need to keep circling the same thought or the same worry to stay safe or to stay responsible. The Stoic mind is attentive, but it is not obsessive. It sees clearly, acts deliberately, and then lets go. So much of the mind's tension begins with a second glance, a re-evaluation, a question revisited, not because it was unanswered, but because it was answered in a way that still leaves something unresolved inside. This is the kind of unease the Stoics learned to notice, a quiet over-engagement with what doesn't need more attention, a mental loop that steals peace, disguised as concern. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The thought you're returning to may be something from earlier today, maybe something about tomorrow, has already been seen. You've looked at it. You've done what you can. You don't need to keep picking it up to prove that you care. You don't need to keep checking on it to keep it from slipping away. If once was enough, let it be enough. Let your mind rest in what has already been done. Let your memory settle where it is. You are not forgetting anything important by not looking again. You are protecting your stillness. The Stoics practiced this quiet discipline not out of coldness, but out of respect. Respect for their own attention, for the limited energy of a human life. To look once and act means to honor what you saw the first time. To keep looking means to say, I don't trust myself yet. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Stillness doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing when to stop reviewing, when to stop rehearsing, when to stop chasing thoughts that have already run their course. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The imagination often begins with a glance, a single look at something uncertain, something unclear. But it's the second look, the third, the 10th, that turns imagination into anxiety. That turns something small into something overwhelming. Not because it grew, but because it was fed. You are allowed to stop feeding that thought. You are allowed to say, I've already seen enough. Let your body settle into this moment. Let your breath return to its rhythm. You don't have to solve anything more tonight. You don't have to revisit anything you've already faced. The peace you're looking for doesn't live in the second look. It lives in the choice not to look again. You've already done enough thinking. You've already asked yourself the right questions. Now you can release the need to keep returning. If the mind wants to glance again at a worry, a judgment, a memory, pause. Gently remind it that you've already been there, that you've already given your care, your attention, your thoughtfulness, and now you are giving yourself rest. The Stoics didn't rush to conclusions, but they didn't loop either. They observed, they reflected, and then they stopped. They didn't believe that clarity grows with repetition. They believed it grows with space, with quiet, with the ability to say, this is enough. You don't need to fix the thought. You don't need to re-examine the feeling. If once was enough, you're free to walk away now. Let that freedom be your rest tonight. Let your mind return to stillness, not by force, but by release. You don't have to convince yourself that everything is okay. You only have to stop questioning it for now. Let the breath soften. Let the weight of the day fall away. You've already looked once. You've already seen what you need to. Now it's time to close your eyes and not open them again until morning. You are safe to rest. Let that be enough. Clarity is often misunderstood. We think that if we look hard enough at something, a problem, a memory, a feeling, it will finally make sense. That the longer we stare, the clearer it becomes. But the Stoics saw the mind differently. They knew that vision, like water, becomes muddied when agitated. To see clearly, they understood. Don't stare. There's a kind of overthinking that looks like effort, but leads to confusion. A kind of focus that becomes fixation. It begins with a simple question. What happened? Why do I feel this way? But when pressed too hard, the answer slips further away. Like trying to find your reflection in a stirred pool, clarity retreats when chased. The Stoics practiced another way. Presence without pressure. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Don't be overheated or overly focused. Keep your thoughts simple. Keep your intentions pure." That simplicity was not lack of care. It was trust. Trust that the mind sees best when allowed to rest, when given space, when not demanded to explain everything right now. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Whatever you're trying to understand, whether it's a choice you made, a conversation that lingers, a tension that won't let go, you don't have to figure it out tonight. You've already looked. You've already paid attention. And sometimes stepping back is what brings understanding forward, not instantly, not dramatically, but softly in its own time. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Staring makes the mind tense. It narrows your view. It creates the illusion that the more attention you give something, the more control you gain over it. But many of the things we try to force understanding on, emotions, relationships, timing, don't respond to force. They soften under patience. They reveal themselves when we stop demanding that they make sense. The Stoics knew this. That's why they taught detachment, not as coldness, but as clarity. To observe without clinging, to reflect without over-analyzing, to let the truth come into focus without dragging it into view. You are allowed to rest your mind now. You're allowed to stop staring at what doesn't need your eyes tonight. Stillness doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that clarity can arrive quietly, like light filling a room, not all at once, but enough to see what matters. When the mind tries too hard, it starts to spin. It loops. It circles around the same point, hoping to find a new path. But paths appear when you pause, when you step back, when you see with fresh eyes, not tired ones. Let your eyes close without answers. Let your breath be the only rhythm you follow. Let go of the belief that you must understand everything right now. You don't. You don't need to get it right tonight. You don't need to explain what happened. You don't need to plan how it will unfold. Clarity, like peace, often comes after surrender. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart." Gratitude begins when you stop looking for what's missing and see what's already here. The same is true for understanding. When you stop chasing the meaning, it has room to find you. Maybe the thing you're trying to make sense of, a fear, a change, a hope, doesn't need to be named yet. Maybe it's not stuck. Maybe it's just waiting. And your stillness will give it the space to unfold. Let the thoughts pass without needing to grasp them. Let the questions be unanswered without being heavy. You don't need to shine a light on everything. Some truths become clearer when the pressure fades. Some lessons settle in your bones while you sleep. You've looked enough for tonight. Now let your eyes close. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts drift without direction. The answers will come if they are meant to, and if they don't, rest will still be here. You are safe to stop looking now. Let that be enough. Some thoughts are like guests who no longer belong in the room, yet find their way back in through the side door. They arrive uninvited, carrying the same questions, the same tension, the same old stories. And though they may feel urgent, the Stoics remind us that not every thought deserves an answer. Not every thought, simply by returning, earns your attention. If a thought returns uninvited, they taught, it can be ignored. To ignore something does not mean to deny it. It means to refuse to be ruled by it, to recognize it but not welcome it, to see it pass across your mind but not to follow it down its familiar path. The Stoics believed that the mind should not be a house for everything that knocks. It should be a space you protect, with care, with calm, with choice. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself, reminded his own thoughts to stay in line. Don't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care. What he was really saying was this: a thought is not sacred because it is loud. A thought is not wise because it repeats itself. And if it's not useful, it doesn't need to stay. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. If something has come up tonight, a memory, a mistake, a worry, and if it's the kind of thought that keeps circling, returning again and again, as if it's waiting for your attention, you are allowed to ignore it. Gently, quietly, without resistance. Let it pass through, like wind against a curtain. You don't need to grab it. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to hold it still and understand it completely before you let it go. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Uninvited thoughts often pretend to be necessary. They come dressed as reminders, as responsibilities. They say, you can't rest yet. You haven't thought this all the way through. But the truth is, most thoughts like that aren't seeking resolution. They're just repeating patterns, loops that feel productive but lead nowhere new. The Stoics knew that the mind, left alone, repeats itself, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because it's trying to protect you. It tries to predict, to rehearse, to prepare. But rest is not something the mind will suggest on its own. Rest is something you must choose, by stepping away from the mental dialogue, not by solving it. You are not obligated to entertain every idea that shows up. The ability to ignore a thought is not weakness, it's strength. It means you are beginning to understand that not everything you think is true. Not everything you feel needs action. Not everything that returns deserves another welcome. Let yourself rest in that freedom tonight. Seneca wrote that to be everywhere is to be nowhere. The same is true for your attention. If you give it to every thought that returns, you'll have none left for what actually matters. For sleep, for peace, for the soft exhale of stillness. You are allowed to guard that attention. You are allowed to close the door on thoughts that don't serve you. And if the same thought knocks again, let it. You don't have to answer. Let your mind begin to slow. Let it grow quiet, not by emptying, but by ignoring, by choosing which thoughts to follow and which to let drift past, like clouds with no meaning. You don't need to argue with a thought to dismiss it. You don't need to resolve it before you rest. You only need to stop offering it your energy. Even now, you may feel something return. A worry about tomorrow. A moment from earlier today. A feeling that something was left unfinished. But ask yourself, do I need this right now? Is this useful? Or is this just habit? Knocking again, hoping I'll answer like I always do. And then choose to let it go. Not because you've conquered it, but because you've seen it enough times to know it doesn't lead anywhere new. Let your breath be your home now. Let your body soften into rest. Nothing more is needed tonight. No more analysis. No more explaining. No more rethinking of what's already been thought. Let your thoughts be like leaves on water, floating, gentle, unimportant. You are allowed to ignore what doesn't serve your peace. You are allowed to rest. You don't need to wait until the mind is empty to sleep. You only need to stop feeding what's already full. And when the thought returns again, as it might, don't be surprised. Don't be frustrated. Just ignore it again. Not with resistance, with ease. with calm. You are not here to fix every idea. You are here to rest. Let that be enough. Some people believe they must keep thinking until everything is perfect, that they cannot rest until every flaw has been addressed, every answer found, every loose thread tied off. But the Stoics saw this differently. They believed that the goal of reflection is not to eliminate all imperfection. It is to find peace. Not a flawless world, not a flawless self, just a calm mind, a quiet center, a place where thought can settle, and from which you can live with more clarity, even if everything is not fully resolved. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote so often to himself, not to chase perfection, but to return to balance. He used his journal not to create an ideal version of himself, but to untangle the knots in his thinking until he felt steady again. For him, the practice of reflection was not an endless search for what's missing. It was a gentle turning inward to settle the mind so he could return to the world with strength. Reflection, when used well, is a kind companion. It helps us learn. It gives us room to grow. But when it becomes perfectionism in disguise, it loses its value. It becomes self-surveillance, restless, demanding, and often it turns into self-criticism, masked as honesty. But the Stoics remind us, you do not owe yourself perfection. You only owe yourself presence. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. A person can spend an entire evening in their own mind, going over everything they could have done differently, what they should have said, what they should have noticed. But there is no natural end to that kind of reflection. If peace is not the goal, then the process becomes endless, and the mind becomes a courtroom that never closes. The Stoic approach invites us to set a boundary, to decide this is enough for tonight, not because we've found every solution, but because we've arrived at stillness. And that is what the soul truly needs. Epictetus warned against mistaking perfection for virtue. He believed that what mattered most was not flawless reasoning or unshakable discipline, but the ability to return again and again to the core of your being, the part of you that is steady, honest, and calm. And that means knowing when to stop. It means knowing when reflection is helping and when it has become rumination. There is a difference. Reflection brings light. Rumination brings weight. Reflection asks, what can I learn from this? Rumination insists, you are not enough. Reflection ends when peace is reached. Rumination ends when exhaustion takes over. You are allowed to stop thinking once you feel calm. You don't need to be perfect to rest. You only need to stop fighting yourself. Sometimes the mind says, but I haven't figured it all out yet. That voice can be persistent. It tells you that there is still more to improve, still more to examine, still one more scenario to reimagine, one more memory to revisit. But peace does not arrive at the end of that road. Peace arrives the moment you recognize, I have done enough for now. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You are allowed to say, that's enough for today. You are allowed to close the book, even if you haven't written the perfect ending. Even the Stoics made mistakes. Even they felt doubt. Even they repeated lessons to themselves again and again, because life did not always go the way they planned. But they understood something important. Clarity comes in moments of calm, not in moments of control. To live well, you must return to yourself, not as a project, but as a place of refuge, a place where you can be whole, even if not everything is resolved, a place where reflection is quiet and kind, not relentless. Tonight, let yourself pause. Let your mind return to a softer pace. Let your thoughts settle like leaves drifting to the bottom of a still pond. There is no need to stir them up again. If peace is here, you do not need to keep searching. You do not need to perfect the moment. You only need to be in it. This is the heart of Stoic rest. Not a state without flaw, but a state without resistance. A space where you allow yourself to simply be as you are, right now, without needing to earn it. Let your breath deepen. Let your shoulders soften. Let the stories in your mind begin to slow. If something in you is still searching, still asking questions, still trying to rehearse what comes next, it's okay to tell that part of you. We'll return to this later. Not everything must be resolved tonight. Not every truth must be uncovered. Not every doubt must be answered. Peace is not perfection. It is the moment when you are no longer in conflict with yourself. That is enough. That has always been enough. Rest now. You've already done enough. Worry often begins as something small, a single thought, a quiet concern that drifts into the mind without much weight. But if we give it too much attention, if we poke at it and feed it with more questions, more imagined outcomes, more rehearsals of what could go wrong, it grows, and like a fire, it thrives on the fuel we offer. Each anxious thought becomes kindling. Each mental scenario is another dry branch tossed onto the flames. The Stoics understood this. They warned not against fear itself, but against nurturing it, against allowing the mind to become a workshop for panic. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I escaped from anxiety. Or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside." He knew that the fire of worry does not burn on its own. It feeds on our participation, on our willingness to sit with it, speak to it, argue with it, and try to solve it before anything has actually happened. Much of what we call preparation is just fear rehearsed over and over. We imagine the worst, believing it will make us ready, but all it truly does is make us tired. The Stoics taught that preparation is only useful when it is calm, when it is rooted in what is real, not what is imagined. And worry, by its nature, lives in the future. It feeds on possibilities, not facts. You don't need to entertain every thought that appears. Just because a fear shows up doesn't mean you have to offer it a seat. This is what Epictetus taught when he said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Worry is not a reflection of what is. It's a reflection of how we choose to think about what might be. If you give it no attention, no story to build upon, it withers. But if you begin feeding it, if you wonder what if, or why now, or how will I handle it, you're handing it wood for the fire. And the mind, once warmed by that fire, finds it harder to rest. There is a kind of vigilance in us that means well. It wants to be ready, to stay one step ahead. It believes that worry is the same thing as care. But they are not the same. Worry is noise. Care is action. Worry loops. Care moves. Worry agitates the body and clouds the mind, while care brings focus, clarity, and compassion. You can care deeply about your life without setting your thoughts on fire every night. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You're allowed to notice a fear without following it. You're allowed to say, "I see you, but not now." The Stoic view holds that your peace is more valuable than your prediction. That being prepared for something is never worth sacrificing your calm for it. This does not mean denial. It does not mean pretending there is no danger, no difficulty. But it does mean recognizing the limits of worry. It does not protect you. It does not change outcomes. And in most cases, it never even materializes into the thing you imagined. Most of what we worry about never arrives. And the few things that do often look nothing like the version we feared. You don't need to light a fire to stay warm. You don't need to rehearse the worst to survive the day. Peace is not passive. It's a choice, a refusal to keep feeding what no longer serves you. The Stoics believed this was within your control. Not the weather, not the words of others, not even fate itself. But your attention, that is yours. And it is the root of freedom. When a worry arises, ask, is this useful? Or is this habit? Ask, is this preparing me? Or is this depleting me? Because often the fire of worry does not come from the event itself. It comes from our endless rehearsal of it, from our constant spinning of what could go wrong, from our need to imagine ourselves into readiness. But you don't become ready by fearing. You become ready by being steady. There is strength in quiet, and there is clarity in stillness. You are not required to think through every possible scenario tonight. You are not required to solve problems that haven't happened. You are not responsible for preventing every loss in the world. You are only responsible for choosing where your mind lives. And tonight, it doesn't need to live in worry. Tonight, it can return to calm. Tonight, it can rest. If the thought comes again, the same fear, the same unease, let it pass like a cloud. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to argue with it. Just breathe. Just notice. And let it drift. The fire can't grow without your fuel. Let your breath deepen. Let your chest soften. Let the storm of thought begin to clear. You do not need to fear tomorrow tonight. Tomorrow can carry its own weight. You are here now, and here you are safe. Here, the fire is out, and nothing in you needs to keep it going. Let your thoughts become slower, like ripples spreading across still water. You don't need to fan every flicker. You don't need to respond to every spark. There is peace in the space between thoughts, and tonight, that space belongs to you. Let it be wide. Let it be quiet. Let it be your refuge, because you are not the fire. You are the stillness that surrounds it, and that is enough. In every season, nature teaches a quiet kind of wisdom. The sun does not rush to rise, yet every morning it does. The trees do not strain to grow, yet over time they stretch upward, branch by branch. Rivers move without urgency, yet they shape valleys and carry entire forests downstream. Nothing in nature is hurried, yet nothing is left undone. There is a deep rhythm in the world that continues without force, without panic, and without resistance. The Stoics looked to nature not only as a model of harmony, but as a mirror of how human beings might live more peacefully. To live in accord with nature, for a Stoic, was not merely about observing the outside world. It was about aligning the inner world with the same principles: simplicity, patience, trust. A tree does not resent winter, nor does it beg for spring to arrive sooner. It waits, it conserves, and then, when the time is right, it opens its buds and stretches into bloom. This is not slowness out of laziness. It is stillness born of confidence, confidence in the process, in the cycle, in the unforced unfolding of what will be. There is no anxiety in nature, only what is needed, when it is needed. Animals do not worry about tomorrow. The ocean does not question its own depth. Even the wind, though it howls and crashes at times, always returns to quiet. The natural world pulses forward not by rushing, but by flowing. And so too can we, if we allow ourselves to be part of that rhythm instead of always trying to outrun it. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Time is like a river, made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place." He saw that trying to grasp each moment, trying to manage or force the future, was like trying to dam a river with bare hands. The wiser path is to float with it, to participate, to act when needed, but not to struggle against what flows. When you look back at your life, some of the most meaningful changes did not come from effort or control. They came from persistence, from showing up, from waiting when you didn't have clarity, and from trusting yourself to act when you did. Rushing doesn't bring wisdom sooner. It often makes it harder to see. When we move too fast, we mistake urgency for importance. We confuse motion with direction. But when we slow down, we see what matters more clearly. Nature does not race, because it is not afraid of being late. And neither should you be. You don't need to run ahead of the present moment. You don't need to chase peace by hurrying to fix everything at once. The Stoic lesson here is not to do less, but to stop trying to live faster than life. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Let it ripen. Let it take the time it needs." We've come to believe that stillness is the absence of progress, that if we aren't achieving, deciding, planning, or producing, we are wasting time. But nature shows that time is not wasted when it's used for restoration. Soil is not barren when it rests. It's recovering, preparing, becoming fertile again. You are allowed to have slow seasons. You are allowed to rest without guilt. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. This kind of rest is not idleness. It is choosing to move in harmony with what is real, not what is imagined. It is choosing to wait for the right time, rather than forcing a result, just to feel in control. And it is not easy. Everything around us teaches speed. Quicker answers, faster outcomes, immediate responses. But a Stoic understands that the most important things, character, wisdom, peace, cannot be rushed. They take the same kind of time nature takes, steady, patient, deliberate. If you've ever watched the sky shift from dusk to night, you've seen this lesson already. It never snaps from one color to the next. It fades slowly, one shade blending into another. You don't notice the moment it changes, and that's the point. Stillness is often invisible, but it's working, deepening, anchoring. There is no need to accelerate something that is already becoming. When you feel like you're behind, pause and ask, behind what? Behind whom? The trees are not behind. The stars are not late. The mountains are not slow. They are simply themselves, moving on their own timetable, and that is enough. You are not required to match the pace of others. The Stoics didn't define virtue by how fast a person succeeded, but by how well they lived with what was in front of them. That includes failure. That includes waiting. That includes not knowing what comes next. What matters is not speed, it's steadiness. You don't have to do everything tonight. You don't have to figure it all out by morning. Let your breath return to a natural rhythm. Let your body take the shape of rest. There is nothing more to chase for now. When we stop rushing, We see more. We listen better. We stop speaking over our own thoughts. We become like still water, clear enough to see through. And in that clarity, we find what we've been missing. Not more answers, but more peace. Nature never rushes, and yet all is accomplished. It accomplishes what matters. Not everything, just what is needed. The Stoics would remind you that this is your task too. Not to do everything, not to please everyone, not to be perfect, but to live in accordance with your nature, to act with wisdom, to pause when you need to move forward when it is time. That is enough. If you feel the impulse to hurry, to solve, to plan, let it pass like a breeze. There is no storm that needs your mind right now. Let go of the need to get there. You're already here. And here there is time, there is breath, there is space to simply be. You are not a machine. You are not a deadline. You are not a to-do list. You are a living being. And like every living thing, you deserve time to rest, time to grow, and time to simply exist without being useful. That is not laziness. That is life. Tonight, let the river carry you. Let the world do what it has always done. You don't need to be ahead of it. You don't need to be behind it. You only need to be with it. That's where the calm is. That's where you are. And that is more than enough. Among the many gifts nature provides without asking, sleep is one of the most overlooked. Not because it is hidden, but because it is often dismissed. In our search for answers, we tend to prize waking hours, the time when we act, plan, produce, or reflect. But even the Stoics, who spoke often about reason, control, and clarity of mind, understood that part of a well-ordered life includes rest. Rest is not failure. It is not weakness. It is a wise and necessary retreat from the noise of the world and the burdens of constant decision. The human body, like any part of nature, is not built for uninterrupted motion. Even the stars, which seem fixed in the night sky, follow cycles. Even the ocean, ever in motion, has its tides, its rising and receding, its quiet and its fury. To live in accordance with nature means to accept these rhythms, to honor them. And sleep is one of the most natural rhythms of all. We are quick to sacrifice sleep in the name of productivity, or even in the name of worry. How many nights are lost not to activity, but to thinking? Thoughts that chase themselves in circles, solving nothing, only tiring the mind that tries to contain them. But a Stoic would ask, if sleep is part of nature, why resist it? If it restores the body and quiets the mind, why avoid it with more thought? You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus Aurelius, despite the immense responsibility he carried, wrote often of the need for rest. He reminded himself that sleep was not a distraction from duty, but a support to it. In his meditations, he wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive." But that same understanding begins the night before, with the willingness to let go of the day. Letting go is not a loss. It is a choice to stop carrying what no longer needs to be carried. And sleep allows for that. It interrupts the endless grasping and restores us to balance. There is a kind of wisdom that comes not from thinking more, but from knowing when to stop thinking altogether. In Stoic thought, virtue is found in action, but also in restraint. Just as it is wise not to speak when silence would serve better, it is wise not to stay awake when sleep would offer greater clarity. Not every question must be answered before rest. Not every problem must be solved before peace. In fact, the mind often finds better answers after it has stepped away or slept. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The Stoics spoke of the logos, the rational order of the universe, the structure beneath the surface of things. Sleep, though it may seem passive, is not without structure. It, too, is a part of that order. It renews what thinking alone cannot. The brain resets, the muscles heal, the heart eases. No effort on our part is required, only permission. To allow yourself to rest is to affirm that life does not always need your interference. Sleep is not escapism. It is surrender, yes, but a wise one. The same way a sailor knows when to raise the sails and when to let them fall. There is no use fighting against the wind forever. Sometimes the wisest action is to wait, to anchor, to trust that tomorrow will bring what tonight cannot. Often we think that staying awake means staying in control. But control is not the same as clarity. The Stoics were not afraid of letting go. They did not fear stillness or silence. They welcomed both as companions of reason. For what is reason without rest? What is clarity without recovery? Even the most finely tuned instrument must be placed down from time to time, or it loses its tone. You are allowed to rest. Not as a reward for exhaustion, but as a natural part of being alive. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In the same way, it is not sleep that troubles us. It is our thoughts about what we should be doing instead. The belief that we must earn every moment of rest, that we must exhaust ourselves fully before we deserve to stop. But nature does not work this way. It does not punish itself before it allows for stillness. It simply follows its rhythm. Your rhythm matters too. There is strength in knowing when enough is enough, when reflection becomes rumination, when awareness becomes anxiety, when doing becomes overdoing. Sleep is not the enemy of reflection. It is often the conclusion. The final chapter of a day lived thoughtfully, and sometimes the wisest choice is to close the book and let the pages rest. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Some of the greatest changes in a person's life happen not in moments of intensity, but in slow shifts that occur beneath the surface. Sleep allows for that. It gives the mind a chance to reorder itself without conscious interference. What felt urgent before sleeping often feels different in the morning. Not because the world has changed, but because your clarity has returned. The Stoic approach is not to ignore life's challenges, but to meet them with readiness. Sleep makes you more ready. It doesn't make the problems go away, but it allows you to greet them with steadier hands and a quieter mind. You are less likely to react, more able to choose. That is the fruit of good rest, not only calm, but capacity. When the body is tired, it signals something important. It doesn't ask for indulgence, it asks for care. To ignore that signal is not strength, it is disconnection. A Stoic aims to be in harmony with life, and life includes cycles of rest. A tired mind is not weak. It is simply telling you the truth. And listening to that truth, accepting it, is an act of self-respect. You don't need to earn rest. You need only recognize when it's needed. The same way you trust your lungs to breathe and your heart to beat without conscious effort, you can trust that rest serves you even when you're not managing it. Sleep requires no performance. It is one of the few things that works best when you stop trying. So let go of the need to fix every thought. Let go of the need to solve what hasn't asked to be solved tonight. Let go of the idea that you must carry wisdom only in waking hours. Sleep is wise. It listens without noise. It heals without effort. It restores without asking. It teaches the art of stopping, not as defeat, but as renewal. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, allowed himself this. In the quiet hours, when nothing more could be done, he rested, and he woke with strength, not because he pushed through fatigue, but because he honored it. The Stoic lesson here is simple. Let nature teach you what effort cannot. Let the body speak without interruption. Let the mind soften without guilt. There is no honor in exhaustion for its own sake. There is no wisdom in chasing a mind that only needs to sleep. Tonight, sleep is your companion, not your obstacle. It is not in the way. It is the way. You don't have to prove anything in this moment. You don't need to be clever. You don't need to be brave. You don't need to think. You only need to allow. Breathe gently, release what the day asked of you, and give yourself to the deeper wisdom that comes without words, without decisions, without resistance. Sleep is not the end of thought. It is the clearing of space for thought to return clean, quiet, and unburdened. There is nothing else to do. This is enough, and so are you.